What's your relationship to force and power? Let's explore that in today's episode of Tea and Tao. This is chapter 2. All the world knows beauty, but if that becomes beautiful, this becomes ugly. All the world knows good, but if that becomes good, this becomes bad. Being and non being produce each other. Difficult and easy complete each other. Long and short measure each other. High and low depend on each other. Note and sound harmonize with each other. Before and after follow each other. Therefore, the sage keeps to the deed that consists in taking no action and practices the teaching that uses no words. The 10,000 things arise, but he does not originate them. He acts, but does not possess. He accomplishes, but claims no credit. It is because he lays claim to no credit that the credit cannot be taken from him. Over the last few days of reflection, what's really stood out has been three ideas. From this chapter, we have the idea of interdependence, of force versus power, and the idea of detachment and legacy. So, when we talk about interdependence, what does that mean? We have the idea of independence, where I am on my own, where we are singular and we don't depend on anyone else. And then we have interdependent, which is perhaps a more mature way of engaging with our shared reality, which is to say things are defined by each other, where these things that are opposites are in connection to each other. One of the stories or ideas that I think about with this is the Batman and the Joker. They are opposites of each other, but more so the idea that if one of them was not present, the other would also not be as emboldened. If the Joker was not there, then who would the Batman fight? And if there's no one to fight, then who is the Batman? And on the other hand, if there was no joke, and on the other hand, if there was no Batman, would the Joker have someone to push against? If you look at a lot of the comic book stories of the Joker, a lot of his stuff is wanting to go after Batman. He's not going after fame or money or status or any of that stuff, besides, I guess, being the person who took down Batman, but it's all about Batman. And so we can see how in this dynamic, this relationship, one without the other almost seems diminished. All these different polarities. The one that stands out to me mostly is long and short measure each other. When we are measuring something, there is a part of our brain that says, well, it's 1 meter, and that's more than an inch, but less than a yard. There's our intellect gives us that. I believe the invitation with the Tao and Taoism is to bring more of a context, to look at things more holistically, to look at things from different perspectives and to include those in. This takes us to the idea of force versus power. There's a great book out there that speaks to this, Force versus Power. And in that book, they talk about how a lot of our energy and our efforts can be put towards forcing things, making things happen, and how that force is a type of action, and yet power is the ability to produce a result that is sustainable. A very simple example is the story of the hare and the tortoise. The rabbit and the turtle are looking to run a race, and the hare has a lot of force and a lot of energy, and it can just go. And yet the challenge is that it is only able to perform that force only so often. And so as the story goes, you notice that the hare will run very quickly for a little while, and then they need to rest. And as the story goes, the hare rests a little bit too much, while the tortoise, it may lack the forcefulness, and yet its ability to maintain a consistent level of power, a consistent level of output, is what allows it to ultimately win over the hare, who again has the ability to make things happen. It can run very, very fast. If we're looking at things holistically from a beginning, middle, and end, we can see very clearly that the tortoise is the one who wins. And this touches the idea of Wu Wei, which we'll hear about a lot in these chapters as we go. And that's the idea that there is action in inaction. The idea that taking no action can, in fact, be inaction if and when it is done intentionally. Sometimes it is wise to wait. It's not to say that we won't still take action, but we allow a pause. We allow some curiosity to come in. We allow a breath. We allow ourselves and perhaps others the permission and even the wisdom to not act, or at least not act right now. This chapter speaks to the sage the idea of doing little for great return. And this is for sure a paradox, as there are many paradoxes in the Tao Te Ching. And when we look at the context of the history and we look at how its proximity to philosophies and other ways, such as Confucianism, that was very much about structure, I'll say active governance by the government. So as an individual, there's someone coming in and there's an external guidance, and that's very much Confucianism. Versus Taoism speaks a lot more to the, I'm hesitant to use the word passivity because that can be seen as less than activity or aggression. And yet, if we're looking at the thread of this chapter, we can see aggression and being passive, passivity, are in fact also opposites that are interdependent with each other. And so, this idea that we have to take action all the time or else nothing happens. One of my unlearnings over the years is so enticing to our human. The human wants things, that wants to see things, that wants things to happen. That part of us that wants uncertainty, that wants something new, novelty. When we give these parts too much emphasis, it can tend to lead us feeling unsettled, anxious, feeling like we always are not yet done with whatever it is that we're doing. If we allow ourselves to go down that road and create habits, patterns, and beliefs around that, well, then we'll never stop. There is a never ending to the effort and the pushing and the forcefulness that our modern society tells us that we have to participate in order to get our needs met. And how, while all of that is true and very much the reality that we all live in, when we are seeking to become more harmonious, when we're looking to be in more benevolent leadership, when we want more of a lasting, sustainable impact, it benefits us to have both of these tools at our disposal. When I need to, I can act, but I also have the capacity, the maturity to know, or at least to have the inquiry of whether or not this action I want to take or think I should take needs to be taken. Something I like to say is just because we can doesn't mean we should, and just because we should doesn't mean we can. And so perhaps the takeaway here, when we are too fixed on a certain way, we lose our flexibility. And when it comes to leadership, when it comes to influence, when it comes to how we want to be in the world, our capacity and our ability to be fluid, to be flexible, to have different options can be one of our greatest assets. If we look at a boxer, for example, the ability to go from left foot forward to right foot forward, southpaw to, I guess, normal, is a huge advantage. Same here. And as we develop this ability to have more options, then we can start to choose with more intention. And when we are able to look at our options with more neutrality, this allows us to start to be detached, to be unattached to whatever options or whatever choices that we see in front of us. The challenge I find for myself is that when I am overly attached to a certain outcome, I need or I want it to happen, either because for the sake of that action or that result, or if I believe that action or result is going to get me something, and I get overly invested, what can happen is all of a sudden I'm out of balance. You could even say that my structure is now susceptible to the push and pulls of life. And in a way where if I'm standing on one foot and the winds of life comes in and throws a storm, my ability to do anything but kind of scramble or fall over or whatever it is diminished. And yet, if I have both feet on the ground when that storm comes, my ability to move, to stand, whatever is needed in that moment is much higher. So I think that's what I'm going to share today about chapter 2, Tao Te Ching. We'll be speaking more here about some next chapters. If you liked what you heard here and enjoyed some of these insights and would like to learn more about Tao Te Ching and how to apply it in our modern context, be sure to subscribe, be sure to like, leave a comment, let me know what you think about this. How have these concepts shown up in your life? And I'll look forward to continuing our discussions and dialogues together.